So we are back with more news, and it is some interesting news, but we'll get to the interesting news in a second. Or the big news, I should say. We'll get to the big news in a second with news coming from Booker T about the fact that he actually was supposed to stop being an announcer on NXT in December, as the current arrangement for announcing or the announcing positions were only set up until Pat McAfee would return from his hiatus, which Pat McAfee is now a part of College Game Day and is doing commentary for the NCAA, specifically football, which, for those who may not be aware, Pat McAfee actually has a background in football as a retired kicker, I believe, or punter. And once Pat returned, you would presume that he would reassume his position as commentator alongside Michael Cole on SmackDown. But with the fact that Booker T is saying that he was supposed to only be an announcer on NXT until December, it either makes you wonder if Pat McAfee is going to be gone a little bit longer, or if maybe Book got the time period wrong, because you would figure that it would be the case of Booker T sticking with NXT until college football is done, which, to my knowledge, college football is not done yet. I don't know how much longer college football has, but I know football season is almost over, and specifically that the postseason will be starting up soon. So you would have to figure that once football season is a distant memory, that Pat McAfee would be returning to the WWE. It is, in my opinion, still possible that Booker T could get removed and Wade Barrett could move back to NXT. Pat McAfee could move to SmackDown, yada 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 yada. Or maybe you have Corey Graves switch out and Pat McAfee go with Kevin Patrick on Raw, and you have Corey Graves move to SmackDown with Michael Cole. I think that is also a possibility, and have Pat McAfee take over the color commentary role on Raw. But the only reason why I think it's possible that they won't do that is because of the idea of not messing with chemistry, and it's pretty obvious based on the last year or so, or based on how things have been since Pat came to the main roster as an announcer, that he has a ton of chemistry with Michael Cole in the broadcast position. So there's that. And that's something that we could keep an eye on. It does seem like also, speaking of, well, I've still got to work on my segues, but at Wrestle Kingdom 17, we're going to be getting a lot of news over the next couple of days about the biggest event of New Japan's calendar year, especially with the big signing coming out of Wrestle Kingdom 17, that being the debut of Mercedes Moné, who we will talk about in the next news video. But Kenny Omega and Lio Rush both got shook up at the Wrestle Kingdom event with, I mean, if you saw the photos that Lio Rush put on it online, you would think he was in some sort of car accident. But the damage was minimal, outside of a little cuts and bruises for Lio Rush, from what it seems like. And that Lio Rush is going to be okay. It's just going to take a little bit of recovery time. And same with Kenny. Kenny just had a minor shook. It was minor. I guess it was a minor shakeup for Kenny, if you want to call it that. But he was working with. I mean, I know Kenny was working with some sort of an injury. I can't find what injury it was. Oh, his eye. Kenny Omega had a very swollen eye and some sort of an eye injury following a kick from Ospreay. It does seem like he forgave Ospreay for the mistimed kick or the ill-timed kick, but it was, like I said, minor injuries on both accounts, and both guys will be okay. It's just going to take a little bit of time for both men to recover. Simple as that. Bad time. Good thing that he was taller. But also, I just want to clear up one other thing, and that one other thing is... Well, actually, scratch that. I didn't notice it behind me, or at the bottom of the list, because I have a list of news topics to talk about in each video. And the one thing that is... that I didn't notice for this video was that William Regal has officially returned to WWE after a year gone from the promotion, and ironically enough, it seems like it was almost a year to the day that Regal left that Regal was released from WWE last January. If you want to retrace his steps, he was released last January and debuted for AEW in March at Revolution, and then, well, returned to WWE in January. It is unclear officially what Regal's position is within the company, but what we do know is that it will be some sort of a vice president role, working officially with NXT. So it's going to be similar to his position before, where he's very involved with the developmental, but it will not be it will not be an on-air role, because Regal is barred from working on television until 2024 due to his arrangement, or his pre-existing arrangement with Tony Khan as far as his release from AEW was concerned, and what allowed him to be released. Also, the last bit of news, and the big bit of news to talk about in this video, is WWE has announced officially that Money in the Bank will take place. Number one, which there was conversation after Triple H took over that there was a possibility that Money in the Bank would not happen, and that the Money in the Bank ladder match would move back to WrestleMania, with Triple H doing away with gimmick pay-per-views. But it seems like at this point, at least, that Triple H will be doing away with certain gimmick pay-per-views, but just not all of them. Like mainly Hell in a Cell, TLC, stuff like that, pay-per-views that are specific to certain gimmick matches, as opposed to money. I mean, I guess technically saying that would be also inclusive to Money in the Bank, but Money in the Bank must have done well enough to be kept around. But last year we saw Clash at the Castle take place in the United Kingdom, and it was pretty much the first WWE event to take place in the UK, in my opinion, probably since Rebellion or Insurrection back in the earlier part of the decade, which I think it's probably been close to 20 years, if not right around there, since WWE last had a show in the United Kingdom. But this year, on July 1st, WWE will host, the UK will host another pay-per-view with Money in the Bank taking place in the O2 Arena in London. And will be another international spectacular taking place overseas for WWE. There were some within... I am one of those people that thought that WWE may not do, especially with the plan of doing an international live event in India, and also the plan with Saudi Arabia to do a show in Saudi Arabia, or do their shows in Saudi Arabia, that maybe WWE would hold off on doing another premium live event in the United Kingdom. But it is pretty obvious that if there's one thing that Nick Khan and Stephanie McMahon may be fixated on, it is growing the international exposure for WWE and stabilizing the international markets for the promotion, which is something that may not have been as much of a fixation under Vince McMahon, because when was the last time Vince did an international pay-per-view outside of Saudi Arabia? Rebellion, insurrection, again, it's been a long time. But either way, these have been my thoughts on wrestling, and I will leave you with this. I am extremely excited for Money in the Bank in the O2 Arena in London for one reason and one reason only. It is because the UK crowds always deliver when it comes to WWE events, and they are being treated to their second premium live event in 2 years, which I know for a fact is something they're going to be jumping for joy about, because they were hungry for pay-per-view wrestling in the UK, and it was always the delay that made WWE wonder if it was worth it. But you got to figure maybe their reservations have changed. But these have been my thoughts on all things wrestling. There will be more news videos to come, so stay tuned for that, and I will see you in the next one.